Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Magdalene Heart Path course. This is session 3, and I'm Mercedes Kirkle, guide and facilitator for this course, and really happy to be here with all of you once again. So what I wanted to do today was to start out with some time for sharing experiences you've had since our last meeting that are related to the course material, insights that you've had, or any questions that have come up for you relative to this material. So if there's anybody who has something that they would like to share, please unmute yourself and we'll start with that.
This is Christy. I'd like to share.
Hi, Christy.
I missed last Saturday for reasons that I couldn't control, but I just wanted to say that when I listened to the supplementary material after session 1, I had a profound realization about what life might be like without judging myself into a deep pit of despair. And it was like, it kept me awake for quite a while one night. And I just let myself feel it really, really deeply. And then for the next couple of days, I found that I was so much more in peace, that the things that are habitually difficult for me to do, like exercise and just that's the only one I can think of right now, but things that I typically just feel really heavy and resistant about, suddenly it was way easier. I wasn't feeling the pull to kind of check out and cope in unhealthy ways. And it was just like such a profoundly different awareness of possibility that it just like was very transformational.
Wow.
But then
well, let's pause there. One moment before you go on.
okay.
I really want to celebrate that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
what I hear is such a clear example of how deep this the effect is from the way we've been trained and how we might change if we shift relative to that training, those habits. So thank you so much.
Well, and I guess the other thing I want to say about that is that all this stuff that we've covered so far, like the session 2 material, this is all stuff that I know very well intellectually. But this is the first time I've really allowed myself to feel it.
Thank you for that also, because that's a really important discernment.
Yeah.
Part of our training to live in our head has been to even relate to emotions from our mind. And a lot of us have thought we were connected to our emotions because we had this mental understanding. And that's really different from the feeling process that we're talking about.
Yeah. And I'm really glad for those supplementary materials, because then I can kind of pause things and kind of ponder and reflect and stuff. And what you said at the end of the last ones was the, I forget how you phrased it, but kind of pseudo emotions, the ones that have such judgment attached to them. That's the shame and guilt and depression. And there was another one that I can't remember.
Anger is the most common.
Yeah, sure.
I call them hybrid emotions.
Hybrid, that's the word.
Emotion and a judgment.
Yeah, and how much I have lived my life through those. And that leads me to, you know, the but that I was about to go into is that because those feelings of shame and self-blame and negative self-judgment are so deeply ingrained in me, it that training kind of reasserted itself after a couple of days. I had trouble sustaining it. And it led to such a reluctance to view the session 2 material. Like I really procrastinated. and then as I was listening to it and felt just, this sense of relief that, okay, I can do that. that I really had to laugh at myself. That, isn't it interesting that even when we know, again, intellectually, when we separate ourselves from the feeling part, we really prevent a deep, emotional understanding and keep us away from ourselves.
Thank you so much. I'm very moved by what you're expressing and the depth with which you're working with the material and staying with it through that changing landscape of different feelings, celebration, openness, reluctance, maybe even
Oh yeah,
fear
big on the
there.
reluctance.
Yeah.
The fear.
Yes, and that you persisted and stayed with it, which is what we're developing in this course. And hopefully what we're doing today will support that even more. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll share something if we have time.
Yes, please.
Kind of to piggyback on Christy's hybrid emotions. I think that this might be guilt, but often I feel like I don't even know if I'm in my feelings or in my head. Like I trick myself by saying certain words and thinking that I'm in my feelings. But anyway, so one of them is I often say, I feel bad. So for example, like if I made a decision, we went on this weekend without, because my friend was sick and we decided to go anyway. So I feel bad that I did that. And it's like, that doesn't seem like a feeling. It seems like martyrdom or guilt and that comes up a lot. Or I don't want to look like a bad person. So I want to say I feel bad. So, you know what I mean? It's so, I'd like to kind of understand that and change that because it doesn't feel genuine.
Yes. So first I want to begin with celebrating this awareness, and you are not alone in this at all. There are many, many people, myself included, who have spent a lot of their life communicating in this way. And it's what most of us do, at least, here in United States culture that I'm familiar with. You hear it all the time. But when we say that, and I would consider that a judgment, I feel bad, as opposed to I feel good. And that tends to be a lot of the way we communicate our feelings is through those judgments. So let's take that circumstance that you were talking about this weekend where you made this choice to go on this trip. And then you said you felt bad. If you were to translate that, what's the feeling that you actually have about your choice to go on the trip rather than the judgment of badness? What do you actually feel?
Well, like it's a hybrid feeling of guilty.
Mm-hmm. And so the hybrid feeling, and for those of you who haven't yet listened to the supplementary materials, this is explained more in the supplementary materials, but there are 4 feelings: anger, guilt, shame, and what was the 4th one? You're muted, Christy.
Depression.
Depression, thank you. That are, rather than what I would call pure feelings, they tend to be most often a mixture of a feeling and a judgment. And the best way, pardon the judgment, the way I recommend to work with these and get to the deeper level is to identify the judgment. And once you identify the judgment and set it aside, then you'll get to the deeper feeling that's underneath. So when you think about feeling guilty about going on this trip, Stephanie. What are the judgments you have?
Well, I feel wrong. Is that
Mhm,
selfish?
mhm. Oh, that's a juicy one.
Um,
I
Yeah.
imagine I shouldn't have gone.
right.
Mhm.
Or but the other thing is I feel joyful being here, but I want to be perceived that if I do that, that's selfish. So I have some feeling like, so what would the judgment word be? Yeah, selfish, I guess. Yeah.
I'm selfish. People are going to see me as bad or something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I want you to do is take that mixture of judgments that we just identified and just for now, set them to the side. You can take them back after we're done if you want, but just for right now, set them to the side. And if you do that, is there a different feeling that comes up other than guilt about your choice to go on this trip?
I feel empowered. I feel free. I feel joyful.
Ah, interesting. You feel happy
Yeah.
in some way. I'm wondering, since you were feeling guilty, I suspect that there's a little bit of painful feeling in there also, because that to me would be related to that guilt, where that guilt would actually be coming from. And I'm wondering if there's a little bit, in addition to the happy feelings that are emerging when you set the judgments aside, if
I
there's
guess
a little bit
nervous,
nervous or
nervous of how I'm perceived.
nervous, yeah. Possibly, is there any regret about choosing to go on on this trip?
Not really. But
Or any feeling of, you feel torn about the choice that you made?
yeah, maybe, but it's more about like how I'm seen.
Okay, so
But
so nervous, I think
yeah,
sounds most accurate. Okay, so in addition to the joy and the happiness about that you went on this trip, there's also some nervousness. And this is life. This is what happens. We often have a mixture of feelings. They're not the same. So there's a mixture here, and they're pointing to different things. So the nervousness, what I'm hearing is pointing to your underlying inner divine qualities, what we're going to be talking to today, of wanting to be maybe accepted
yeah,
or understood for
yeah,
why you chose to go on this trip.
yep.
Yeah.
Accepted.
So So when you set those judgments aside, we're going to go back and just review this pathway we just worked. Setting the judgments aside, that guilt resolved into something deeper, a truer feeling of nervousness, because you want to be um,
Accepted.
accepted and understood by others for your choices. Is that accurate?
Yep.
And how does that feel to shift into that rather than I feel guilty or the judgment I shouldn't have gone, that was bad?
Um, it feels inclusive. That's a word that came up. Inclusive and um, safer. Just there's more feeling there.
Hmm. And I'm a little confused what you mean by inclusive. Can you explain that?
Okay, because I'm with a friend, so it's just that inclusive, I guess. And
It includes opening up to her in
yeah,
a stronger way.
yeah,
Ah,
or just being included and not rejected because of my choices. Or
ah.
yeah,
So it was in relationship to this friend specifically about how you're seen.
yeah.
Ah, thank you.
Thank you.
And did you have another question also, Stephanie?
Oh yeah, we were just thinking this week about, because I read the material too, is it's interesting the energy of judgment that can come even if the words aren't there. So like the word with my husband, I can tend to know that I'm being judgmental when I say, why why didn't you take the trash out? Or why did you buy this? Okay, so it's very observational. Why did you buy milk? Why did you buy milk? Why did you, or something like you know what I mean? It's in my energy that I'm a lot of
Can
times
you
with
can
the
you
word
say it
why.
in a way that carries that energy so we can hear the energy?
Oh, let me think if I like, why did you go to the store? You know, why did you go to the store? Like, it's very snarky, you know? And yeah, that word why, I tend to, that happens. Yeah.
Thank you. So again, I want to celebrate this awareness, and which may be a new awareness of judgment that can come in different ways. The words are one way, but there are other ways too. And our energy, our body feeling can also indicate to us that we're coming from judgment, even when the words wouldn't necessarily indicate that. And oh, I just had a thought. What was that thought? Well, I don't know, but hopefully, if it's important, it will come back. So, oh, I know that the other thing I'm hearing is that you're noticing patterns within yourself. And we all tend to have these characteristic patterns, ways that we most often will communicate a judgment or communicate that we're going into judgmental consciousness. And that's really wonderful to become aware of also, is your own patterns, because that will support you in being in choice whether you want to continue that pattern or change it. So again, let's use this example. When you said, why did you buy that? With that certain tone in your voice or look on your face or energy inside, however it is that you recognize it. Um, what is the feeling that you're having?
Uh,
I would say the observation is, when I notice that you bought that, I'm feeling what?
disdain. That's
Disdain, disturbed,
irked,
upset,
irked, irritated,
irritated.
annoyed.
Yeah, yeah. And that is more about you. Now you've made yourself open and vulnerable rather than pointing the finger. Why did you do that? That's wrong. That's wrong wasn't said, but it was probably heard in your consciousness and probably heard by the person you're talking to too.
So I would say, like, I feel disdain or I feel irked that you went to the store, or that you,
I'm guessing that irked is more accurate, like
yeah,
that you bought that.
right. I feel irked. Yeah. So
Right.
then,
And what's the reason that you're irked?
because I asked him not to.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if the inner divine quality that that's pointing to is wanting, cooperation around what you choose to buy at the store.
Or to be heard. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, to be heard
Mhm.
and trust that what we talk about will actually be what occurs.
Yeah. Trust.
Yeah. So
Thank
how
you.
does that feel to compare that communication? When I notice that you bought this thing, I feel irked because I'm needing cooperation and trust that when we agree what you'll buy, that's what'll actually happen. How does that feel compared to, why did you buy that?
What seems more clean and productive, because I'm conveying something that I really want.
Right. And that productivity, we'll be getting to that next week, is where you can go from here is into action, steps to actually change both this incident, but also future incidents, so that you can have more likelihood that your inner divine qualities of cooperation and trust will be fulfilled.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Makes sense.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Anyone else have anything they want to share before we start our material for this week?
Yes. It seems to be, I guess, a blending of the energies of what is happening here, because when Christy was sharing, she mentioned self-judgment and martyrdom, and Stephanie also used martyrdom and guilt. And I've dealt with that, where I felt that issue, and I felt that when I felt sorrow for others, or was emotionally affected by suffering that others were going through. And it took some time, but I've come to the place in life where I say, I've been a martyr in many other lifetimes, not in this one. So I just let that go. And I say, if you feel it, it's yours. It's not mine. So it goes back to chapter 20 that we listened to when I was, in preparation for today, where Mary says, it's not your job to heal someone, to take their pain. You can assist them. You can offer the love and assistance if that's what they desire, but it's not your job to take their pain or their suffering. So in thinking of this, I've realized I'm no longer a martyr. And it's coming up because what both have expressed and shared with, I've gone through that. And I'm sure at some level, all of us experience things similar to them. So in listening to them, and it's great when people share, because others can relate and learn something from it. I certainly did, and I appreciate what they brought forth. So in thinking about the video that I watched, and you referenced chapter 20 of the book, what I had said earlier is that the Dalai Lama has always stated that suffering is inevitable, or pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So that's not something that we want to, a road that we want to go down that road. And in the Hindu religion, when they observe people on the streets or begging or poor or destitute, their belief is that you don't do anything for them. You just, leave them. I think that it's taking it a little bit too much, because you can assist them without taking away their life experience. If it's an experience they have to go through, let them go through. But certainly you can offer some form of comfort, and whatever aid you can in some form. In one of the courses I'm doing, I've been studying for a number of years, is a
Bob,
course in miracles.
Bob, I want to take a break because I want to say something in relationship to what you brought up that I think is really important.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your sharing, and I celebrate with you your growth that you're expressing. Thank you. And I want to say two things about Mary Magdalene's point of view relative to 2 points that you made. One is about that we're not responsible for other people's pain or suffering. One of the reasons she brings that up is because this is often a reason why people are reluctant to express painful feelings, is because they think, and their experience has taught them, that when they express painful feelings, that will bring up pain for others, and they don't want to do that. Sometimes it's because they say they don't want to hurt other people. Also, sometimes it's out of a fear of if you bring up pain for others, others will choose not to want to include you. You might lose the relationship or the love of the other or whatever. So there's fear around bringing this up, fear of not wanting to hurt others, and also fear of repercussions to yourself if you express painful feelings. And so part of why she brought that up was that saying that that's not our job. And in fact, when we are authentic, when we express our truth, not only are we helping ourselves immensely, but we are potentially, supporting others as well. But we don't have control over that. We don't control what happens with others. That's up to them and their spiritual path. And we can hope that they respond in ways that we would like them to respond, but it's not something we can control. But she's really wanting to support people and shifting from this place of being afraid of what your effect will be on others, to really looking at yourself and coming out of the damage you're doing to yourself by not connecting with your true feelings, including painful feelings, and potentially, if you choose, expressing those honestly in relationship. So that's the first point I wanted to make. The second point relative to this differentiation between pain and suffering, Mary Magdalene is a great advocate of allowing ourselves to experience pain, that pain is real. It's an important part of our human experience. And if we don't experience it, we will be shortchanging ourselves. It's something that is there to help us. It's part of our spiritual guidance. And we'll be getting into that more today. Relative to suffering, what she would say is that the primary arenas that lead to suffering are the things that we add, that she doesn't recommend, to our experience of pain. The first one being judgment. And that as we're observing from people's sharing, this awareness that judgment leads to suffering in various ways. The second one is one that we'll be talking about next week relative to acting in response to our feelings and our inner divine qualities. And there's a potential for suffering if we become attached to our desires for a certain outcome, a certain action to be taken. And we'll be talking about that next week. But I think she would agree with this differentiation between pain and suffering, and that they're two very different things. And that suffering is something we create that we can change our patterns relative to. And pain is something that is there to support us and help us if we understand. So I want to go back to you, Bob, and I'm going to ask you to make this very short because I do want to get to our material for today.
Okay. The last item I just wanted to share is that in the Course in Miracles, what Sananda has taught us is that I forgive the both of us for what we have never done wrong. And that has stayed with me when I came to that particular lesson in that course, because sometimes people will apologize for something that they feel guilty, they feel that they have done. And when someone says to me, I apologize or I'm sorry, I just say, I forgive the both of us for what we have never done wrong.
Thank you. And what I feel is that we are learning the technology that allows us to deeply do that process of forgiveness by changing any judgment of good, bad, right, wrong, into feelings, and then the deeper steps that we're going to learn this week and next week. And so we'll be empowering that forgiveness to be transformative through this process. So I wanted to check in. Victoria, did you have something you wanted to share?
I did, thank you.
Yes.
And it is relevant because what I discovered, I had an incident this week where one of my colleagues isn't moving as quick as I'd like him to move with our projects. So I went and lay on my bed and I felt kind of a bit let down, started to wonder if it was ever going to happen, you know, started to feel a bit unworthy, and I wrote it down how I was feeling. And I realized it's the connection. I wanted that connection. I wanted to feel that we were doing something together and building. And what was really, the real discovery was that was it. Just wrote it down, wrote my emotions and left it. I didn't allow myself to fill in all the blanks about what if and what won't. And then when we had a call later that day, it was as if like he just had some other things that he needed to attend to, and he was still on board 100%, you know, really wanted to get it going as quickly as I did, but of course other things were getting in the way. And what it taught me was that, one, there's one of my programs, you know, the feeling not good enough and that things are not going to work out for me. But secondly, also to just be a bit more compassionate and accept that, you know, we just have to allow people to do their things in their time as well. And also the thing about how short the emotion was, I realized that if I just sat and felt it, it was gone in under 10 seconds. It's only when you start to tell the story that it prolongs it. So thank you. It was really, really good, really good.
Thank you so much. I am celebrating that breakthrough, those insights. I'm so happy to hear this. And yes, that when had you stuck with the judgment, you know, he's a slackard, he's not doing his job, or there's something the matter with me because this is what always happens, whether it's judgment of other or judgment of self, that would have gotten you stuck. But you made a different choice to go into feeling. The feelings I'm imagining were something like frustration, maybe anxiety, and then that led you to what you were really longing for, which to me was a surprise when you said it, but I trust very much that you were longing for the connection.
Right.
And in that deeper connection to the part of your inner divinity that you were longing for, there was this release, and the release was into peace and also compassion and deeper connection with this person. And that supported, I believe, this change to happen, where suddenly there was a very different dynamic in your next interaction.
No, it was really quite incredible. So thank you for this work.
Thank you so much. Okay, with that, I am going to shift into focusing on our topic for this week. And to do that, I want to go into our slides and move into watching our slideshow. So give me just a minute, please, and I will call up our slides. All right. So this is session 3, and our topic is connecting to your divinity. And I want to say that from Mary Magdalene's point of view, and also in my experience, this is the most important session of this whole course. This is very much the heart of the process that she is teaching, because what she really cares about is your connection to God. And it's what she most wants to share and support in others is connecting with God. So that's why I say this is the most important session from her point of view, because this is the pivotal aspect that really will shift into deeper, stronger, more lasting connection to God. And from my point of view, it's also the most important because in my experience, this is the part of the process that people are least familiar with. It's what we haven't been taught, what wasn't shared with us or modeled to us as we were learning how to relate to life altogether. And so this is the part that is most different and might take the most work to shift into really integrating this piece of the model. But if you do, I predict from my past experience that you will experience tremendous benefit from it. So I am very excited to share this material. So what I want to do is go to Mary Magdalene Beckens, the book, chapter 2, and start with a quote, an excerpt from that book. And the quote begins with, "Emotions are always motivated by beautiful qualities, what I would call divine aspects of ourselves." So in this, she's including painful emotions, painful feelings. And what she's saying is that they're always coming out of something beautiful. And not only beautiful, but something very, very important, our divinity. And I would say that this, for most of us, is a major shift to see that our painful feelings, as well as our joyful feelings, are connected to something very beautiful and something very important, our inner divinity. And she goes on to say, by letting ourselves fully feel and experience our emotions, we will be led to these divine aspects. And I want to say that the last sharing that we just heard from Victoria was a beautiful example of that, where she chose to let herself fully feel her emotions rather than staying in the judgment, which was the initial thing that came up. And that led her to one of these divine aspects that she was deeply needing to connect with in this situation. For her in that situation, it was connection with this other person. But it led her to her inner divinity. And that's Mary Magdalene's promise to us, that this is the path of connecting with God. Not only the path, and there are various paths, absolutely. What she says is this is a very direct path. There's great efficacy in this because it's part of our human nature that we have these emotions going on, and they're given to us for a reason, to guide us on this path. So I want to talk a little bit about this concept that she's bringing of divinity, that a lot of us received training that God or the divine is somehow outside of us. Maybe this was something we received as a child in our religious instruction, that God was this king-like figure up in the clouds, up in heaven, sitting on a throne. Sometimes we think of God outside of us as, God is in nature, is in the beauty we experience in nature, or the upliftment in nature. Or there can be various concepts or understandings, but many of us hold this idea that God is somehow out there and we are separate from God. And she is suggesting something different. She is suggesting that within us is an inner essence that we can all connect to inside ourselves that is our inner divine. And that's what she's working with in this approach. And she's saying that when we use the tools that she's presenting to us, that this becomes a bridge to God. And it actually becomes a pathway to go beyond separation into connection, non-separateness from God. So this inner divinity, I like to think of it as being similar to our spiritual DNA. It's something that we all have inside of us. It's something that we're made of inherently, just the way we all have our genes and our genetic structure. And there's another thing about this that makes this analogy work for me, and that is that this inner divinity, our inner DNA, our spiritual DNA, that she's calling our inner divine qualities, that it's something we share with all other human beings. Just the way we share our genetic structure with all other human beings. And it's what causes us to have an affinity, a unique affinity to other human beings, because we share this and we share these universal divine qualities that all live within each of us. We may express them differently, just the way we express our genetic makeup in a unique way, each and every one of us. But there's also something very similar and uniting about this. So this inner divinity, she says it has different aspects to it or different qualities. And similarly to what we talked about with feelings and judgments as well, there are words that we can learn that help us to connect with these inner divine qualities, because they tend to be largely silent within us, just the way our genes are silent within us, our DNA, and yet it's very much affecting us. And there's a similarity with our inner divinity. But if we become aware of these words that describe our inner divine qualities, if we develop that understanding and that fluency, it can support us in connecting with our inner divinity. And so I have given this list of words, and it's in your handout for this session, the list of inner divine qualities. And what I would like to do is start with a meditation at this point. And I would like to invite you to close your eyes, and I'm going to slowly read this list of inner divine qualities as a kind of a meditation on our inner divinity. And I want you to just notice the response you have as I read these words to you, and then we'll share afterwards what came up for you in this meditation of connecting with inner divine qualities. So at this point, I invite you to close your eyes, to go within, and I'm going to slowly read this list. Connection. Acceptance. Appreciation. Acknowledgement. To be valued. Belonging. Inclusion. Community. Family. Communication. To be heard. companionship, friendship, closeness, love, intimacy, affection, nurturing, warmth, caring, kindness, compassion, empathy, consideration, reliability, dependability, respect, self-respect, stability, security, safety, protection, emotional safety, trust, reassurance, support, cooperation, to know and be known, to understand and be understood, honesty, authenticity, integrity, peace, beauty, dignity, ease, equality, inspiration, physical well-being, air, food, water, shelter, rest, touch, sexual expression, safety, autonomy, choice, freedom, play, joy, humor, pleasure, meaning, awareness, consciousness, celebration, contribution, competence, productivity, growth, hope, power, purpose, change, to matter. Let yourself notice what you're feeling, having heard this list of inner divine qualities. And then I invite you to come back to our meeting space. And I invite you, if you're so moved, to share what you noticed as we did that meditation on inner divine qualities.
What I noticed was that a lot of these things were things that I thought I had to get outside of myself. And the idea that it was an inner thing was something that I was sort of shifting towards as a new idea as you were saying it. Like part of me was going, oh, really? Oh, this is inside me. Oh, I thought I had to create that somehow, or go and get that, or struggle for it, or find it, or yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because that's an important shift. And it's part of what empowers us to realize this lives in us. So we have power to be this, to have this, as opposed to something that is outside us that we don't have power over.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As you were reading this list, I was going into an alpha state. I was dozing off. But as the words came out of your mouth, what I saw was the planet, the globe. And as each word came out, it floated up, and each one in different colors. All the words were surrounding the planet. So when you said joy, there was joy on a planet. When you said celebration, I saw myself there with everybody. We were dancing, celebrating. So as the words came out, they encircled the entire globe. And that's why I was dozing off. I just was going out. But it was nice. It's a new form of meditation for me. I never tried that before. I'm going to use it.
Thank you. And these are powerful pointers to a very real state of connection with God. And what I hear you describing, Bob, is that you went into connecting with God through these words. And as Mary said in that initial quote, these are all beautiful things. So when you were describing that vision, I got chills of seeing the world encircled by these beautiful divine qualities. That's the world I want to live in. And that's the world Mary is saying we can live in, we can access. And she's showing us how to do that.
I had two different feelings. I felt sometimes that my head was tingly and I felt very peaceful. And then a lot of the time my mind couldn't stay here and went to like an argument I was having with somebody, or like my mind went there. And so I'm kind of curious about why I maybe couldn't stay here. I don't know if I'm making a judgment, but I wasn't able to stay here the whole time.
It sounds to me like you're reporting what you actually experienced. It's an observation. And I can think of two possible reasons. One is that this is an adaptation to what may be a higher frequency than we tend to live at and are comfortable with. And this happens for people in meditation often, where you access a higher frequency, a higher dimension, and it's difficult to stay there because you're not adapted to it. You're not accustomed to hanging out at that frequency. And so that could be part of what happened. And if that is the case, what I would suggest is, again, be gentle with yourself. And I trust you and everyone will adapt to this at the timing that's right for you. And so to open yourself to this process as you feel moved to do so, and allow it to guide you. And so if you are intending to be with this and you can for a period of time, then you notice you've left and you've gone somewhere else, that might be your being saying, that's enough for now. That's the right dose for right now. So that's one possibility. The other possibility that I can imagine is that those words might have stimulated memories for you of times when those inner divine qualities weren't being fulfilled. And that may have taken you into focusing on those times because that got stimulated as you heard the words. And if that's the case, hopefully as you learn this process, you can engage it towards that kind of pathway of, oh, I got taken into remembering this, and here's how I can heal it. Here's how I can use that memory to open up to and reconnect with my inner divinity once again.
I get sad and frustrated when I hear that my being might not be ready to be in this higher vibration or whatever. Like, why wouldn't my being want it? It's so wonderful. Or it's so, that's a judgment, I guess.
Well, it's beneath that is I hear that you have a longing for this, a longing for this kind of, with the inner divine quality, I would say, of communion with this kind of divinity and higher consciousness. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's true of all of us, especially the ones who show up for classes like this, that we're in touch with that longing, and that it's an adaptation. We have adapted for our survival and for our well-being to have our inner divine qualities fulfilled here in the third dimensional realm in the best way we knew how. And part of that adaptation, it's kind of like we're ready to outgrow now. You might think of it as being like the caterpillar that's ready to turn into a butterfly, but it's a process. And just thinking and wishing for it isn't sufficient. We have to go through a real transformation. And so that's why I keep coming back to this, be gentle with yourself, because it is a real process and it's not unique to you. It's not because you're uniquely failing or unsuited to this. All of us are going through a process, and it's the process that Mary calls ascension into the higher states of being. And this hopefully will support you in that process in a very organic way, with your being leading the way, not your mind, but your being telling you what is most supportive for you right now to have the growth you long for. And that's, for many of us, a shift too. It's a shift out of thinking what's best for us into trusting our experience and our body as showing us what is best for us, including what might be most direct, most, as she might say, efficacious in having that transformation we long for.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else want to share their experience in this meditation we did on these inner divine qualities?
Hi, Mercedes. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I was feeling content through probably about half of it. And then I started into a situation I had with a patient yesterday at work, like what else I could have said, you know, how I could have used this process better. And kind of got off on that. And then by the end, To Matter triggered something in me, and I went, whoa, my energy just went right down. So obviously that it's some area I have to work on, but yeah.
Yes, it sounds to me like the memory of this incident from yesterday is unresolved.
Yes.
There's some painful feelings coming up relative to it, which might be as simple as dissatisfaction, some level of disturbance,
Yeah.
pointing to some inner divine quality that's not yet, that you are disconnected from at this point relative to this situation. And hopefully that will help you to re-identify that, what that inner divine quality is, so that you can have the healing you want relative to this.
Thank you. I'll work on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last thing that you mentioned about one of the inner divine qualities, to matter, it sounded like it brought up pain for you, grief, a kind of mourning.
Yeah.
And that can happen, especially if these are touching into inner divine qualities that are somehow especially important to us. And most of us tend to have a few of these inner divine qualities that really matter to us at the soul level. They're very significant ones that we are working on in this lifetime. And we tend to kind of keep cycling back to getting disconnected from those and having pain in relationship to those. And that can be helpful to notice too, as a form of deeper healing of that deeper soul level pain in relationship to a particular inner divine quality.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just as an aside, To Matter used to be a really big one of mine. Whenever I had conflict, especially with an intimate partner, it would always come around to my inner divine quality of needing to matter. And I did great healing work on that. Of healing, and we'll be going into that more in just a minute about how to do that kind of healing. And over a couple of years, I did that work, and I can say that that almost never comes up for me anymore. I am celebrating that I have actually healed that. And I feel like it was a big piece of soul work that I had signed up to do in this lifetime, and that I am so happy to report and to notice that it's really changed very deeply. So I have great confidence in this work supporting that kind of very deep level healing. Anyone else want to share their experience from the meditation? We have time to take one more.
I do. It's Linda. I'm sorry I'm late. I thought it was at 1 o'clock, so I thought I was early. And when I saw it had already started, I went into, oh no, I did it again. I screwed up again. And then, but it was like just as soon as I heard a word, one of these words, all that cleared out. And with, all that kind of judgment, like, I just heard you did your best. You didn't do it on purpose, but it just cleared out. And then I'm looking at like the community and wanting to be in the group and wanting to be responsive to the group. And even though I was late, as soon as I got in, I got in alignment right away from the energy of the groups, and all that other stuff left so quickly, which is unusual for me. So it was like that group in your voice, and it just dissipated. And I went, wow, yeah.
Thank you. So I hear that as a testimony to the healing power of connecting with our inner divinity, our inner divinity. And also, I'm imagining that when you realized that you had missed part of the group, you felt distraught.
Yes. Yes, because
And
I
I'm-
found, yes.
And I'm guessing the inner divine quality that was connected to was that you were wanting inclusion and participation with the group
Right.
process.
Yeah.
And also, I'm guessing maybe a sense of wanting to be able to depend on yourself to, you know, function the way you want to be functioning, so to
Right.
support this kind of inclusion and connection.
Right, and I looked in my book and I had 1 o'clock, but I didn't quite see it on the website, 12, so, you know, that like having better, I don't know what the
So
word is.
Linda, I want to ask you
Mhm.
if you could relax that focus on what you did wrong or what you could do to fix it. And instead, see if you can focus right now on the inner divine qualities you were longing for, of inclusion,
Yeah, it was inclusion,
participation.
participation, and there was
And-
something,
And
yeah,
then we said being able to depend on yourself.
right, and I'm over here, continuity.
Yes.
Like
with
I
the
set
class
out to do
material.
this. It's the first
Yeah.
course I've really been able to manage with Zoom.
Yes.
And it was,
So,
yeah,
so I'd like you to invite you to just be with that. Really focus on that part of your inner divine nature that was longing to be fulfilled. That beautiful part of yourself that wants to participate, to be included, to have continuity in your learning process,
Mhm.
and to be able to depend on yourself. And to see what you notice when you connect with the beauty of those parts.
Mhm.
What happens?
Well, I saw myself settling even more. And also see the phrase, it's like trust your I am presence. I see that phrase up there. Yeah.
That sounds like a pathway that's potent for you of connecting with God.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now I want to go back to our slides here. But before I leave this list, I want to encourage you to stay connected to these words and to start to develop this vocabulary of inner divinity, and that will really support you in making this shift. So again, you might want to keep this list of these inner divine qualities at hand so that you can start to refer to this and make use of it to help you, to support you in staying connected to your inner divinity. So I want to go back to that concept we introduced last week about feelings being our spiritual GPS and say more about that. That our feelings are what guide us to this inner divinity. Remember, I said the inner divinity tends to be quiet, silent. Feelings are not. We are very aware of our feelings. They're the mouthpiece telling us something's going on at the level of our inner divinity. And that's why they're so valuable. That's the first reason, but there's more than one reason. And you remember that we talked about, rather than seeing them as positive and negative the way A lot of us have been taught that Mary sees all feelings as positive and valuable, as essential. So renaming them as joyful and painful feelings. Well, we want to take this a step further now, that our joyful feelings are letting us know that our inner divinity is being fulfilled. And they're actually a call to celebrate in some way that fulfillment. Our painful feelings are telling us that our inner divinity isn't being fulfilled, that we've gotten disconnected from it. And they're actually wanting to guide us back into the path of reconnecting. So the feelings guide us to the inner divine quality, whether it's fulfilled or unfulfilled, that's at the source of that feeling, at the source of our being, really. And in the case of painful feelings, they can guide us back to tell us which quality of our inner divinity is not fulfilled. And I liken this to be like a circuit breaker box that has one particular circuit that's gotten broken. Well, we, in our pain, have gotten disconnected from usually one or a few, it can be a couple, of our inner divine qualities. And the feelings are not only telling us that, but they're showing us the way back to that specific inner divine quality that we've gotten disconnected from. And in that awareness, there's an inherent reconnection that happens. It happens through our awareness. We are shining the light of God on that inner divine quality we've gotten disconnected from, and that light is in that process reconnecting us. So it's this, to me, beautifully efficient pathway for showing us our disconnection, and in that showing us, reconnecting us as well. And the last thing I want to say about this is a very important point that is part of this shift in consciousness into this different way of thinking that Mary's presenting. And that is that most of us have the idea that outer events cause our feelings. Something happens in the outside world, and because of that, we have a feeling. Mary's saying that that's not accurate, that outer events do not cause our feelings. But if you remember, way back in the first session, we said we are affected by outer events. They do affect us, and we don't want to cut off from that effect because that's an important part of our humanity. But the effect is not that they cause feelings. And here's that effect. What happens is that our outer events cause our inner divine qualities to either be fulfilled or not fulfilled. And out of that, feelings arise to communicate to us that our inner divine qualities are either fulfilled or not fulfilled. So that's the pathway. Something happens in life, it affects us by either fulfilling our inner divine quality or shocking us so that we disconnect from our inner divine quality. And then out of that effect upon the inner divine quality, a feeling arises to let us know what's going on. And then we can choose to make use of that feeling to either celebrate the fulfillment of the inner divine quality or to find out which inner divine quality we've gotten disconnected from and reconnect. So it's a deep pathway of healing and reconnecting to God and deepening our connection to God, growing our muscle of staying connected to God. And feelings are a really important link in that process. So that's why we talked about Rosie last week and building our feeling muscle, because that will support us immensely in this process, as opposed to overusing our mind, which is what a lot of us have learned to do in the absence of understanding this process and developing our feeling capacity. Okay, so now I want to do some practice with this. And I'm going to do it similarly to the way we've done in the past, where I have sentences, and I wanted you to tell me if those sentences are expressing feelings and inner divine qualities, and if they are not, to translate into the feeling and inner divine quality that that sentence is most likely, as far as we can tell, expressing. So here's our first sentence. That's disrespectful to talk to me like that. That's disrespectful to talk to me like that. Is that expressing a feeling and inner divine quality?
It's not expressing a feeling. It's expressing a judgment.
Yes, and what's the judgment?
That they're being disrespected.
Right, that's disrespectful. So
go ahead.
if we change that, if we want to change that, I always recommend starting with the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you skip over the feeling and go straight to the inner divine quality, you're probably coming from your mind. And there's a good chance when you do that, that you will identify not the right inner divine quality.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to stay with our feeling, because feelings are very accurate and dependable. So what's the feeling that might be underlying this statement?
Well, it could be hurt. We don't really know, but
We don't really know, but let's go with that. That works for me. That's
okay.
possible given this statement.
Mhm.
So if the feeling is hurt, what is that hurt? What inner divine quality? That's a painful feeling. So what
Mhm.
inner divine quality is it pointing to that's not being fulfilled?
Maybe being valued.
Possibly.
Um,
I want to suggest that you go back to the sentence, because there's a big clue for us in the sentence.
okay, then maybe respect. Respect.
Yes.
The person wants respect.
I would guess that. And
Yeah, yeah.
oftentimes judgments will point to the opposite of the inner divine quality that we're longing for. It's that idea of mirroring in our outer world.
Mhm.
We're using the outer world as a mirror. We're saying you're being disrespectful. But if we turn that mirror towards us, what's really going on is we're longing for respect.
Okay.
So I think this could very well be what's going on here. I feel hurt. When you talk to me like that, I feel hurt
Mhm.
because I'm needing respect or longing for respect.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Now I want to ask a question. Does this sound different to you? That's disrespectful to talk to me like that, versus when you talk to me like that, I feel hurt because I'm needing respect. Do you
Yeah.
hear a difference?
Is you like being talked down to?
Yeah.
Or, and the other one is like you're just saying what you need.
Yes, and there's a vulnerability in it.
Right.
Yes. That's inviting in heart connection from the other person to connect with your heart and what's going on with you in this deep part of yourself. And that talking down, that's what happens when we make judgments, because we're saying we know what's right and wrong, which is putting ourselves in the position of superiority versus you, because you're doing something wrong. You obviously don't know. Thank you.
Thank you.
So here's another sentence. Everyone else here knows more about the topic than I do. Everyone else here knows more about the topic than I do. Do you hear feelings and inner divine qualities being expressed?
It's a judgment on on yourself.
Yes, and what's the judgment?
Like I'm stupid.
I'm
Or-
stupid, I know less than everyone else. Right. So if we were to change that, what might be the feeling that's going on for a person making this statement? When I hear everyone else expressing about this topic, I feel
Embarrassed.
embarrassed. I like that. And then let's follow that path of the embarrassment. What inner divine quality is it pointing to that's not being fulfilled? And you can look at your list if you want of inner divine qualities, if that helps.
Acceptance of myself.
It might be self-acceptance, or it could be acceptance by others. It also could be competence. I feel embarrassed because I'm needing competence about this, talking about this topic.
And compassion.
Could be. And here again, inner divine qualities like feelings, we never know what it actually is unless we ask the person who's having the experience. They are the authority about their inner life, and no one else can know for sure. We can make guesses, but we can't know until we ask them. So depending on who this is, what their circumstance is, it could be pointing to different inner divine qualities, but that person will know. And when you arrive at the inner divine quality, part of the way you know, there are certain signs. One of them is oftentimes there's a release of breath, a sigh. Often you didn't even know you were holding your breath. But there's a feeling of landing. That's a big sign. Another big sign is that there's oftentimes a feeling of peace. You come to peace.
I have a question.
Yes?
So what if somebody realizes that in fact they weren't as competent, as they just didn't really know as much as other people there, and what would be a different way that wasn't judgmental, I guess, as realizing that, you know?
So this relates to my last point I just made. If you think your competence depends on what you do in the outside world, then you're always going to be struggling to achieve that competence and judging whether you are or not. But I suggest something different, and Mary suggests something different. She suggests that competence lives inside us. You could think of it as a well of competence. It's the competence inherent in our being, the competence of being inherently connected to God. This does not mean that we can do everything in the outside world as well as everyone else. What it means is that we are competent. And we can bring that connection of God to God through that quality of competence into every single situation, whether we feel like we're more skilled, less skilled, equally skilled to others, it doesn't matter. We will be connected to God through our inherent competence. Can you feel that?
Yeah, that was really important for me to hear.
I'm so glad. Thank you.
Me too, thank you.
So let's go to another of these sentences. She's so irresponsible. She's so irresponsible. Do you hear feelings and inner divine qualities?
No.
So I'm imagining you hear judgment.
Yeah, no, that's very judgmental.
And which part?
Irresponsible.
Right. So if a person were to make this statement, let's translate into feelings and inner divine qualities. What feeling might the person have in relationship to whoever the she is that they're talking about?
There might be irritation.
Mhm. Yes, I like that. That's very, that lines up to me with what the energetics of what I'm hearing in this sentence being communicated.
Yeah. And
So
underneath that might be disappointment too.
there could be disappointment, yes. And irritation is a version of anger. It has a high, that hybrid quality of anger where there's probably judgment, like she shouldn't be like that.
Right.
And then underneath that takes you to a deeper level of feeling of disappointment. And what inner divine quality might that disappointment be pointing to? What might you be needing? Or the person making this statement be needing?
Validation? Is that?
So I don't hear that relating to this original statement. What's in the original statement that gives you the clue, along with the feeling, a possible feeling of disappointment?
That this person isn't living up to your expectations for certain behaviors, or?
It's that when you think about this person and what they're doing, you feel disappointed because some inner divine quality of yours isn't fulfilled. What inner divine quality of, if you were making the statement, of yours wouldn't be being fulfilled?
I want to say hope or confidence.
Or maybe trust.
Maybe trust. Yeah, trust. I like that one better.
Trust or dependability.
Yeah.
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 So instead of she's so responsible, it shifts into, when I think about what she's done, I feel irritated, or, the deeper feeling was I feel disappointed because I'm needing trust and dependability.
Right. So what I'm not understanding is, well, and maybe this is next week, is how we use that to connect with those things within ourselves.
Well, first of all, you just have. You've just connected with the place in you that cares about trust, that cares about dependability, right?
Okay, yeah.
And there is inherent healing in that. If you stay at the level of what's the matter with her, you're stuck. And you're also disempowered because you're depending on her to change for your well-being.
Right.
But if the problem is that whatever it is that she's done has shocked you into disconnecting from your own divinity, then your change is in reconnecting with that divinity first and foremost. And that divinity is, oh yes, I value trust. I value dependability. And in that reawareness, there's inherent connection happening for you.
So
And then out of that, you can make a choice if there's actions you choose to take in addition to that reconnection. But the first step, and the one we're focusing on this week, is the reconnection itself.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, am I looking to develop trust in myself, or is it trust in my connection to God?
Neither.
Okay, I'm glad I asked.
It's pure trust. One of your God qualities is this pool of trust that you can connect with within yourself that connects you to God. It's not trust in anything. It's just trust. Just like God isn't God in anything, it's just God. When you connect with that essence of trust, it's connecting you with your God self. And that's what you're really longing for.
Hmm. Okay, I'll have to ponder that or feel that.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Can you connect with the sense of being filled up with trust?
Yes.
That's it. And it's like that outer experience of whatever this person did. It's like a balloon that got burst. And you lost connection to that fullness of trust within you.
Okay.
So now you're reconnecting to it. And out of that, you can make a choice about what you want to do. It doesn't mean that you will necessarily trust this person. You will be in choice how you relate to this person. It means that you're not deflated anymore. You're not disconnected from God. You're full again. And as a full God being, you can be in choice what would be most supportive for you and all in your actions in the world.
So what you're saying is that the goal here, at least at this point, is to, when we notice that we're disconnected from, for example, trust, because of our disappointment or whatever in another person's actions, the goal is really just to fill ourselves up with the feeling of the divine quality, whatever it is. We just want to
Exactly.
feel it in our being.
Right. And that's where the healing will take place of what happened in you when you got disconnected. And that's what you're really suffering, not what the person did. You're suffering your own disconnection. And so that's where the healing must occur.
That's big.
Very big.
That's really big, Mercedes.
I was gonna say it's so deep. It's like beyond anything I've considered before. Because even
Yeah.
I could
It
even,
is, yeah.
I could even have thought, oh, okay, so I get it. I trust in God that everything will work out. But you're even saying, no,
Yeah.
that's even outside of me.
Yeah. It's like takes you to a completely different place.
Right. And this isn't a belief or a sense. This is a reality, and of experienced reality that has power to heal and to transform.
That's
Cool. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this part and like write it down or something.
Yes. And this is why I say this is the essence of this whole system, the most important pivotal part, because this is really getting to our connection to God and re-empowering ourselves to stay connected and grow on that basis.
Yay. So exciting.
Okay, let's turn to another sentence here. He's so slow. He's so slow. Someone else want to try identifying the feeling and the inner divine quality behind this? We can just say right off, this is a judgment of another rather than our inner experience. So if we were to make this judgment or have this judgment in our consciousness, what might be the feeling and the inner divine quality underneath it? And we'll start with the feeling.
Impatient.
What was that?
I said impatience.
When I see the speed at which he's going, I feel impatient because I'm needing what? What inner divine quality?
Ease.
It could be, but it's not being pointed to by this judgment. There's something else that's more directly being pointed to by the judgment, I would say.
I was going to say speed, but that's not a divine quality.
No,
so-
it's not. It's not a beautiful quality that we all share, which is one of the litmus tests.
But it is one of the, it is similar to one of the inner divine qualities,
Which one would you say?
efficiency.
Yes.
Thank you.
Efficiency or potentially productivity.
Right.
Right.
Yes. But you're needing that inside. I'm needing efficiency. I'm needing productivity. And do you see how staying at the judgment level, well, first of all, it keeps us up in our mind. It keeps us on the outside of what's really going on within us. It keeps us separated from the real heart of the matter of what's going on in us. It's not about him and his speed. It's about me and my longing for efficiency and for possibly productivity, which are beautiful things that we all share a longing for and that manifests at different times in different ways. Okay, here's another one. I can't stand listening to her problems all the time. I can't stand listening to her problems all the time. So, do you hear any judgment in this? And if so, where is that judgment?
That she's a whiner.
That's implied. But in these words, in this actual sentence, which words are pointing to that?
All the time.
All the time. What else? I hear more than one judgment in this sentence. What other judgments do you hear?
Problems.
Problems, yes.
Can't stand.
Can't stand. Yeah, this sentence is
It's harsh.
overflowing with judgment.
Everything's harsh here. Yeah.
So if we were going to translate this into what's underneath this sentence and get the gold out of this situation, we could start with, when I hear the way she describes her circumstances, I feel what?
Annoyed.
I beg your pardon?
Annoyed.
Annoyed. Thank you. That matches perfectly what I'm hearing in this sentence. And what might that annoyance be pointing to for you? What inner divine quality do you get disconnected from when you hear the way that she's speaking?
Harmony.
Possibly.
Let's see.
To be valued.
I don't hear to be valued because I want it to connect to this original sentence, and the original sentence is talking about problems. So remember that trick of turning the judgment around, and what does it become?
What about to be heard?
I beg your pardon?
What about to be heard? Because I feel like I'm always listening to her, but I want to be heard.
It could be, but I don't hear that in the sentence. I don't hear that problem is the amount of time she's taking or, that kind of thing. I hear it has to do with that she's talking about problems all the time. So what's the opposite of what inner divine quality of you is not getting fulfilled when someone's talking about problems all the time?
Would it be ease?
It might be.
What about support?
Possibly. I think there's a couple more direct ones though. Which?
To be seen and understood.
That's her need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Annoying.
What in you isn't fulfilled when she's always talking about problems?
So if you're feeling annoyed, you don't want to feel annoyed.
Right? It's
So
pointing to
kind
something, an inner divine quality, a painful feeling that's pointing to an inner divine quality not being fulfilled.
right.
Peace.
So yeah.
So which inner divine quality is it?
Well, somebody said peace.
Peace.
It
Somebody
might
said
be peace,
harmony.
That's
harmony,
Somebody else said ease.
Balance,
balance. I'd go even further. I'd say joy,
joy.
upliftment.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
That's what you're really longing for, you being whoever's saying that.
Right. Right.
That's the inherent
Oh, the meaning and the rest of
that problems are pointing to. If we turn that around, what's the opposite of problems? Joy,
Mhm.
Fun.
upliftment, fun. Yes. So I feel annoyed because I'm longing for joy, upliftment, fun.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay, we're going to do one more.
Okay.
They make the best ice cream.
Best.
Yep.
Can we have ice cream as a divine quality?
Right.
What did you say?
Can we have ice cream as a divine quality?
I don't think that's quite universal.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's right.
So
Best.
let's start with the feeling. If someone's making this statement, what feeling might they be having?
Yeah.
When I think about that ice cream, I feel,
Pleasure.
I beg your pardon?
Pleasure.
Pleasure,
Yeah. Joy. Again.
joy.
Mhm.
How about ecstasy?
Ecstasy.
I mean, we're talking about the best here.
Ecstasy, right. Yeah. Fun.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I
the
feel
word best is
ecstasy.
judgment.
Now, so what was that?
The word best is judgment.
Right. So we're replacing that with the feeling, which is something along the lines of joy, pleasure, ecstasy. And that's telling us that there's an inner divine quality that is being fulfilled, that we're celebrating.
That's
What-
the word. Yes.
What
Celebrate.
inner divine quality might be being fulfilled by thinking about this ice cream?
Right.
Which one?
Pleasure, joy,
Pleasure,
fun.
fun, joy. Yes.
Celebration.
Well, this is celebration
Yeah.
to
This
me.
is celebration.
Yes, expressing this and sharing it with another person is a form of celebrating.
Well, can you just say, I love their ice cream? Is that still?
Still a judgment.
You could, and let's compare the difference between that. I love their ice cream. When I think about their ice cream, I feel ecstatic because it so fulfills my need for pleasure.
It
What's the
tells me
difference
about-
between those two?
Well, what you said sounds more, you learn about the person more.
Yes, you're opening up to this. And to me, it's much more satisfying. I love their ice cream. We say that all the time. It's sort of a toss off. I love this, I love that, da 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 da. But to really go into the nuances of what is fulfilled in me by this ice cream. I have this feeling of joy, pleasure, ecstasy, because my inner divine quality of joy and pleasure is being fulfilled.
Mm.
That is a whole different level of connection with yourself or with another person who may be expressing that. And we talked about how this process brings us into heart connection. And so celebrating in these deeper, more accurate ways opens our heart, connects us with the real deeper heart of what's going on. So with that, I'm going to stop our sharing. Give me just a moment here and I will come back to our meeting space. Oh, here we go. So we're at the end of our time. We're even a little beyond the end of our time when I was intending to end, but I have so enjoyed connecting around this material and all of your input. And I am feeling happy because my inner divine quality of meaning and purpose and deep connection was really fulfilled through our meeting today. So before we go, I just want to check in to see if anyone has any last questions before we close here. Wonderful. Well, I'm going to go back to our screen sharing then very quickly and talk about recommendations for where to take this from here. So give me just a moment. Oh, excuse me, I have to get the right slide up just a moment. Okay. So oh, are people seeing the slide?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, great. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. Okay. So relative to ongoing practice, what I recommend is as much as you're able, as much as feels right for you, notice feelings that you're having. Always go back to the feelings and start with the feelings, your inner GPS, your spiritual GPS. And then let those feelings guide you to identify the inner divine quality that the feelings are pointing to, that are either being fulfilled or not fulfilled. I also urge you to make use of the supplementary materials again, to listen to the audio recordings for session 3, and also to join in on the Facebook group and share your observations, your breakthroughs, your questions, and all of that. I have confidence will support us in going deeper into this material. And then we will be meeting, oh yes, the reminder, as always, be gentle with yourself. This is a very deep process and let it unfold in its own timing, its own way. And then we will meet again next Saturday, March 6th. And I recommend and urge you to print out and bring with you the feelings handout, the inner divine qualities handout, and then there will be a last one, which is called expression cues handout. And we'll be working with all of those. So that is the end for today. I am going to come back to our meeting space and thank you all so much for continuing with me in this process and for your dedication to your own growth and spiritual evolution, and through that, supporting the spiritual evolution of our planet. Thank
Mm.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mercedes.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye.
Next week, and hopefully meet on the Facebook group in between.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.